You're listening to The Art of Imperfect Adulting. I'm your host, Amy Stone. Here, I share stories from real people navigating the adventure that I call adulting. Are you ready? Me too. Let's do this. Ani Papazyan, welcome to Imperfect Adulting.
Hello, Amy. Great to be here.
I'm so happy you're here. All right. Are you ready for a fun chat?
Let's have some fun.
Let's do it. Let's do it. So on this show, what I like to talk to people about, the whole focus, the kit and the caboodle, is choices and changes and how they impact our lives. So you shared with me in your pitch a pretty big shift centering around moving from one country to another. Does that sound like that's what we're going to talk about today?
Let's talk about it. I'm sure a lot of listeners would relate to it.
I think so. I think so in a bunch of different ways. I'm very excited to hear more about this story. And before we go back in time to talk about the move and when you did it and how that happened, let's talk about today. Share with us where you call home, what part of the world you call home today, and then as little or as much about your family as you want to share with the listeners.
Well, Los Angeles, California is my home. It's been for almost 33 years, and I absolutely love it. I am happily single person. I'm the coolest auntie to
Nice.
a 15 and a 20-year-old that I love, love, love. My family, we're a very small family. And I love to say, like, my dad is Egyptian Armenian that grew up in Cairo and then moved to Armenia and then moved here. My mom grew up in Armenia, lived in Ukraine, back to Armenia, and then we're here. So it's like the great combination of different cultures brought together, but I'm Armenian. Core, 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 I'm Armenian.
Very, very cool. So we're going to talk about that. Okay. So we're going to go back in time to 1988, I think, is when this is. Before we do that, I just thought of another question. So I looked it up on a map to make sure I knew what it is. Tell people where Armenia is,
Well,
roughly,
it's,
like geography.
and I don't even know how to pronounce properly in English, Kafkas,
Okay.
where, Kafkas, it's around, we're surrounded by Azerbaijan, by Georgia, by Turkey,
Okay.
um, Iran close by. Yes.
Yeah. 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 So that's why I looked it up. Okay. So take us back to 1988. And tell us how old you were, roughly. You don't have to give away any secrets that you don't want to. Where you were calling home, which is Armenia, and then what happened?
Well, 1988, it's a year we'll never forget. If I get emotional.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So I was second year in college, and I have no issue with my age. I'm currently very young, 55 years old. But at the
Love
time, I was
it.
second year in college, and we had a massive earthquake which shook the world and completely changed. Whew.
Yeah. So
And you
that
think I've done a
is,
lot of work to overcome this.
it
The
sticks though,
trajectory,
right? It
it's
sticks.
aim of my life, but we had a massive earthquake where we ended up losing our home. But I consider myself extremely fortunate because my immediate family, we survived. Like my aunt passed away in an earthquake, a couple of my cousins, but we survived. And then we lived in our garage for 3 years. And, I love to mention that in America, when you think of garage, some garages are like really nice. Well, our garage was just a piece of metal, no insulation, nothing. And the earthquake happened in December 7th, and freezing cold. Armenia can get 10, 20 below 0 Celsius.
Wow.
Very cold snow. It was
I'm
like
doing the 20
full four
below.
seasons.
So 0 is 30 Fahrenheit, 20 below. It's cold. That's
It's
cold.
cold. Yeah,
That's very,
it's
very
no,
cold.
it's like full snow, full four seasons. And so it was tough times. But like I said, some people see the kind of how that positively changed my life. It was that I don't care much about materialistic stuff. For me, is as long as I'm healthy, I'm surrounded by positive people, and I can do what I love, I'm good.
So
I'm good.
you were an adult. when this happened. Had you been through and you still live in earthquake country. I'm on the other coast of the United States, so I'm in hurricane country, not earthquake country. But is had you been through other earthquakes? Like, was this something that was a part
So
of living in Armenia?
the interesting thing, when we moved to US in 92 and then 90, and we moved to part of Los Angeles, Northridge. And if you look
Okay.
up in 1994,
That's
we
the
had that
huge,
earthquake,
yeah,
Northridge earthquake. And I think for about a week, I slept in my cousin's backyard because I'm like, I'm not going home.
yeah.
This is it, you know. And our neighbors were making fun. They're like, "Oh, you brought the earthquake with you guys from back home, you know." So yeah, that was tough. But like you said, we're in an earthquake state. So if it's anything below 5, we're like, I'm not moving. It's under 5. If things start like really coming off the shelves, then we'll move. But
That is, yeah, no, I mean, I've only been in one very, very mild earthquake. I was in Colombia in South America, and but I was in a car. So I didn't
mm,
feel it at all because the absorption of the car, like it to I haven't ever felt it. I don't know what it's like. So you went through a natural disaster and you stayed between 88 and 92. You guys stayed in the garage. Did you speak English before you guys relocated?
I didn't because English was not one of my languages. In Armenia, because it was Soviet Union at the time, in school we learned Armenian, Russian, and depending on your school, the third language. Mine was French.
Okay.
In our house, because my grandmother and my grandmother kind of were from, used to be Armenian, now is Turkey. So they spoke Turkish. And then when they moved to Egypt, they spoke Arabic. My dad spoke 6 languages, including English and French. My sister's school, her third language was English. But when we came
Okay.
to America, I didn't speak any English. So my
And you
heart
were in your
goes out.
20s.
We came in January 22nd. In February, I turned 22.
Okay. All right. So 22 years old, because there is when you're really young, it's some people say it's easier to pick up the language. All right. So this is not at all a political show. But when you said you thought that a lot of people would be interested in this conversation, one of the things when I was putting together the questions that I did think about is at this time in the geopolitical situation, we are having a worldwide conversation about how people are allowed to move between countries for a variety of reasons, whether it's immigration, whether it's you're
Mhm.
an exile or a refugee, right? And so I do think that this is a really, really a good topic to think about. I've never been forced to relocate and change my country as a reason for that, but I did live abroad by choice when I was in college, and one of my roommates was an Iranian refugee.
Mm,
And then now I live in Miami, where we have a very mixed expatriate community, which includes a lot of people who are exiles from their countries. They didn't choose to. Well, I mean, I guess they made a choice, but it wasn't. They didn't come on travel visas and just overstay.
mm.
So I do think that it's a really popular question to think about because it's a massive, massive change to go through. What do you remember? Okay, so do you want to talk about what you remember when you were surviving in the garage and trying to decide what you guys were going to do, or do you want to talk about when you arrived to the States and what that was like?
Well, I can briefly mention one of the main reasons that we wanted to come because after earthquake, my dad at the time, I was the oldest. I was the second year in college. My sister was still in high school. And my dad's thing was, and we had lots of relatives in America already because they
Okay.
came throughout the years in the 70s and 80s. And my dad said, I want you girls have better choices in life. So our relatives here sponsored us, and that took like 3 years of going through all the paperwork, all the medical exams, and everything. But yeah, actually, when we came here, I honestly say my early 20s is kind of like a haze
Okay.
because of the not speaking the language, the cultural shock, because Armenian culture and American culture is very different. The cultural shock, and then especially moving to Los Angeles, and then just being able to make friends, decide, okay, what career am I gonna pick? Because I just finished high school. I
Okay.
mean, sorry, I just finished my college
And what
because I
did you
finished the
study? What
college.
did you study in
I got my bachelor's in kinesiology, which
Okay.
I was able to reinstate here in the US. But and then deciding, okay, what career? Okay, I reinstated my diploma. Where do I go from here?
Okay. All right.
So yeah, the early 20s is not fun.
Let's talk about, because many people who are listening will be speaking more than one language and they will have experienced some of these things. But living in a place where you don't speak the language, it sounds like you had some family already here, which was some support, and your father spoke English. But what were some of the and this is in the 90s, so this is before Google Translate. And which has made a tremendous difference in how you can navigate the world without speaking the words. But what were some of the experiences you remember that were troubling, challenging?
Well, I have a funny story to tell you.
I'd love
So
this.
I'm
Okay.
in school. Of course, I'm learning ESL, taking ESL, English as a second language. But also, I was told that I was supposed to take speech 101. So I'm taking speech 101, and the teacher says, okay, we have to create our first speech where you're going to come, and it's going to be about cult. Well, I understand cult.
The
Well, I
coat that you'd
grew
wear,
up
yes, as opposed to
yeah,
the
I
group of
grew
people.
up. My grandmother was an amazing seamstress. She made a lot of my clothes. She taught me I knew how to knit, how to crochet, how to make my shirts. I still do a lot of, I have my sewing machine. I do a lot of stuff. So I'm preparing, I'm like all excited because I got this down. I'm going to talk about like a fancy coat. And then about 2 days before the speech, my classmate calls me. She goes, what cult you're going to talk about? I said, and I'm like excited talking about cult. She goes, Ani, it's not a cult, it's a cult. I'm like, what's a cult? I'm from Armenia. I've never even heard of a cult.
Yeah.
So then she starts telling me, I'm like, oh my God. Well, it was early 90s. We didn't have computer
Right,
at
there's no
home.
computers. Oh my goodness.
So I had to run to the library to pull books on to understand what cult is and create a speech. And then I'm standing in front of a classroom. I swear I could see my knees knocking against each other.
Right.
And oh my God, my heart was just palpitating to deliver my first speech. Yeah, that was my
That
not
was a moment.
understanding.
That was
Yes.
the thing that always, when I was living in it. So I had to pay my bills at the post office. And so having a conversation about bills in a language that I was still learning was so hard. And I remember watching a group of very young children. We were at the fitness center, like a community center, and I remember watching a group of young children line up and following the instructions of whoever was there, and thinking to myself, how did they know? How did they understand to do that? And then having the realization that, of course, it was easy for them because they understood what the person was saying, but I didn't understand. So it was hard for me and laughing at myself about that. But the other thing that was I remember just being a pervasive struggle for the entire time I lived outside the country was ordering food and not being coming and not being exactly what I expected. So like where there wasn't a photo and ordering something and there would be like one ingredient that was like, this is just not at all what I thought this was going to be, you know? And just the ease of working in your native language. So no, absolutely. So language and culture, those are big culture shifts. So your family made the move. They had a pretty what I think is a very easily to understand sort of motivation to make this change, which is that they wanted you guys to have more choices and more opportunities than they did. And I think that that's true for people for many parents and children. There's a phrase that is like, we want our children to our their floor should be our ceiling. Like we want them to start where we put them off. So I think that that's a really common thing. Who came with you? Who moved?
Well, my immediate family, my dad, my mom, my sister, my grandma was supposed to come because the actual or our all documents were based on my grandmother because her first cousin sponsored us.
Okay.
And then a month before we were going to come, my grandma passed away. And I remember her as we were going through all the process, 3 years process of getting our papers, everything together. Because my aunt, my dad's older sister, died in an earthquake, my grandma used to say, I don't want to
Interesting.
leave her by herself,
Oh my goodness.
you know. So, yeah, so a month before we're going to come, she passed away. And because all our paperwork was done, it wasn't an issue of us not coming. So, yeah, it
But
was just four
she
of us who
stayed.
came. She stayed.
That's an amazing connection, actually. That's one of those things that you just, it's like the things come together in funny ways. Cause so she said she didn't want to leave her sister behind, and then she didn't.
Her daughter, her
Her
oldest daughter,
daughter,
because
her oldest
you know
daughter.
how they say the parents should never lose a child.
Right. Okay. So her oldest daughter, and so
Yeah,
that
my
meant she
dad's
stayed.
older sister.
Oh my
So
goodness.
my dad's mom, my grandmother, which I was extremely close to, yeah, she always would say, like, I don't want to leave her here alone.
And she didn't. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. That was a tender moment. Okay, so when I think about choices and how they change their lives, how they change our lives, I split them into two groups, right? Those are the things that we control, like, like what am I going to have for lunch? Am I going to train for a marathon? And those that are outside of our control. Now, the earthquake was obviously outside of your guys' control, and we've talked about this a little bit. Like the choice to come was one where you were a young adult, but how much were you involved? How much of it was driven by your parents, and how much was it that you made or didn't make?
Oh no, all of it was driven by my parents, by my dad. And one of the things I remember, he sat us down and said, okay, we're gonna start doing our papers to go to America. So no one's getting married
Oh, okay.
until we go. And yes, of course, my sister was much younger, but in Armenia at my time, sometimes like I was in college, but most of my classmates were already married and had children. I was considered the old maid because I was like 21 or 20.
Okay.
So it was a very common thing. So my dad said, yeah, no one's getting married because we're going to do our paperwork to go to America. Because if you get married while the paperwork is going through, you cannot add new
Right.
person. You can just take it off, but you cannot add new person.
That is so now, so was that an inconvenience? Like
Oh,
were
absolutely not.
you okay.
I was a tomboy. I never even thought about getting
So there
married.
was no romance that was interrupted by your father's decree.
No, 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 no. At my time in Armenia, you don't date much. It's kind of like a set, like someone says, oh, my neighbor's girl, she's single. It's time for her to get married. Oh, I know someone. Let's go take a look at her, like their piece of furniture. And I know
Okay.
that because I've done it for my neighbor. Like he was like almost a brother to me, my neighbor. We grew up together. And it was time for him. He's like, his mom said, okay, we're going to go take a look at this girl. So I want you to come. So three of us, we went. They lived in their garage, and it was a beautiful young girl. She lost her mother to the earthquake. So we're sitting there. We took a look at her. I'm like, she's gorgeous, young, like 17 or 18-year-old. And then the guy, my friend, and her, they went behind a curtain just to say hi to each other. And then he's like, yeah, I like her. And so we're going to get engaged. That was it.
That's the whole thing.
That was
That's
the
the
whole
whole
thing.
thing.
And that's at my time. I'm sure that's not how it is now.
I wonder how it is now. Do you still have family in Armenia?
I
Do you
have
have contact?
zero family in Armenia now. I went back once only after 22 years and I lasted about 6 days.
Okay.
I think I always say I was born to live in America.
Oh, interesting. All right, that's very interesting. Now, so do you ever imagine some of the ways life might have changed had you guys stayed, or
I
how it would have been different?
cannot, oh my God, I cannot imagine at all. I'm so grateful for my dad, for my relatives that we came because the life here, the way I think, like, I've never even dated an Armenian man
Okay.
because they think I'm too opinionated, too independent. I'm not submissive whatsoever. So,
Well, yeah, no, I mean, it's a huge, even though you came with your family, it's an enormous thing to do to move across the globe and start
yes.
over. And it's like, so it's a huge thing. Okay. So, now we're going to talk about, we're going to do some more questions and we're going to talk about what you are doing now. Because before I do the rapid fire questions, I want to give you a chance to talk to people about what you do now. So you studied kinesiology in Armenia, then you
Mhm.
moved to the United States, you reinstated your kinesiology degree, then you now call yourself a pain resolution specialist. What does that mean?
That means I love working with people that have been living with pain, that have been living with chronic pain, or even just get an injury like after an accident. Just when you come to me, you say you have a pain, that excites me. Not because you have a pain, but for me to figure out how to get rid of your pain.
Okay.
So in the last 30 years, I've just studied so much different techniques, different modalities. That's why I went from the kinesiology to medical massage practitioners to functional nutrition to genetic testing and analysis. So I can understand from inside out what's the driving force of your pain
Okay.
and how the fastest way and I can fix it or teach you techniques to get rid of your pain, to maintain it so it doesn't come back. And
Okay.
that drive, I love it.
So how did you get from a kinesiology degree? Like, how did you get started? Like, what was the first step that you were like, you know what? Because kinesiology is just the human body and the way it moves, right? Muscles and bones. And so people can go from that into athletic training,
Mhm.
physical therapy. Okay. So how did you get to pain? How did you,
So in college back home, was studying, I also studied medical massage. And
okay.
medical massage in college, in back home, was all about medicine. It wasn't the, oh, I'm just going to do relaxing massage, or a lot of people here think it's luxury. No, I studied, it's about medicine, it's science.
Okay.
Actually, even now in Russia and some European countries, MDs, medical doctors, can take medical massage as a continuing education.
Well, nice.
Yeah, it's amazing. So that was my foundation. So when I came here and I restated my diploma, yes, as you mentioned, a lot of times they go into like sports. Well, I played volleyball for Armenian national team for 5 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was used to be an athlete. So then here I decided, okay, it's either going physical therapy or chiropractic. So close by where we live, there's CSUN that has amazing physical therapy program. So I went there. They looked at my papers. They're like, everything looks good. It's 2 year full-time student program. Go to orientation, decide when you want to start. So I'm sitting at the orientation, all excited because it's only 2 years until the professor says, and we get 6 new cadavers every year. I said, yeah, that's never going to happen. I I don't even go to funerals. I'm terrified of dead bodies. So that's the same was with the chiropractic school. So I'm like, okay, since I studied massage, as long as there are no cadavers involved, I'm good with massage. But I never liked the relaxing massages because it's too boring for me. And I personally don't like massages.
Okay.
So that's why I was like, okay, I love the pain relief. And honestly, I was so fortunate. You know how they say there are no coincidences in life? Like just when the person has to come into your life for a reason, season, or for a lifetime,
Yeah.
there were reasons that I came across or I sat next to someone who told me about this doctor or this modality that I was supposed to study because it
Okay.
was like this unique, funky, weird techniques that I can incorporate in my work to help my clients.
That is very cool. So I'm fascinated by this. And I love this story. When you came to the United States, you had your degree, you'd studied in Armenia. You did speak more than one language, so you had like the switch in your brain that there's more than one way to say things. But you were a new English speaker, and how long were you in the States before you began to study these modalities? And I assume you studied them in English.
I studied them in English. Oh, you should have seen me when I was in massage school. It was so funny. I would have the dictionary and my anatomy book, but it was cool because I studied anatomy and physiology and organic chemistry in college. So as soon when I see the pictures, I'm like, oh, that's what he's talking about. And then I would look at my dictionary,
Okay.
the actual dictionary. And oh, yeah, it's out until now. The funny thing is, at the beginning, everything in my head, because I was thinking in
In
Armenian or
Armenian,
in
yeah.
Russian, and I
Yeah.
had to translate. And then when the stuff would come out of my mouth, it would be all backwards because I would do literal translation.
Yeah.
Now I think in English.
Yeah. That's a big switch. That's a big switch.
Yeah.
I had to read Albert Camus' The Stranger in French, and I was so confused reading the first like 5 pages, which is all about sand in the desert and a fly flying around. And I looked up the words, and I was pretty sure I was understanding what was going on, but it's a really, really bizarre start to a story. I went to the bookstore, I went to the English bookstore, and I like read the pages in English. I was like, oh, okay, okay. It is the sand and the fly. And then I went on and read. I mean, I was just like, is this really how this starts? Like, what am I talking about? And you were doing body parts and in a much more intense conversation. That is amazing. All right. So that was an incredible commitment to your career and your profession. So today you are pain resolution specialist, and you have something special that you are offering the audience, which is, and we'll talk about it here, and then it'll be in the show notes. And then the easiest way for people who are listening to claim it is if you're on the email list, the link will be right there to collect it. It is a video series. You describe it as 5 short videos of self-help techniques on neck pain and other things. And it's at 5bodypainhacks.com. Tell us more about what this is and why it's a great thing.
So, as I said at the beginning, I love teaching people techniques that they can use themselves. Like one morning, I woke up to an email from a client. She said, Ani, my 14-year-old son woke me up middle of the night with neck pain. She goes, I remember couple of the techniques you taught me. I walked him through it, and she goes, it worked. She goes, as a mom, I was so proud of myself. And that's why, like, I love teaching people self-help techniques to have some tools in your toolbox that you can pull it out, teach someone, and get rid of the pain or something that before you can like go and see your practitioner.
Yeah, no, I
And
love
so
that.
that's what these videos are, like a simple technique for neck pain relief, for back pain relief, lymphatic drainage, just the simple things that you can do yourself on a daily basis.
I love that. I think that that's a really wonderful thing because it's true. Like we have practitioners who help us, but when we need tools, we're often by ourselves, so we want things that we can do on our own at 11 o'clock at night or 6 o'clock in the morning when the doctor's office is not open. Very, very good. Okay, so now I'm going to ask you 3 totally random, not related to your amazing story of moving from Armenia or pain relief, but just fun questions to close this out. All right. So you are a very smart and talented person, but is there something, a skill or a talent, either big or small, that you wish you could do?
Wow. Hmm.
Okay.
I wish I could do. Wow. I never thought about it. That is so cool. Probably I would say be patient
Oh, okay. All right. Very good.
because I'm not
You're
patient.
not patient. You're on the go. You're a driven person. Well, that doesn't surprise me. That doesn't surprise me, having learned your story today. All right. So I have this. I know what you're going to say, but I'm going to ask for the audience anyway. Are you an early bird or a night owl?
Oh, very early bird. Let's book an appointment at 5 a.m. I'm at my happiest. Yeah,
And what time?
early
So
bird.
you're an early bird. So then do you end your day early? Like it's
My
3 o'clock
family
and you're like,
knows
I'm
usually
finished.
you never call Ani after 8 o'clock because most likely I'm in bed or asleep,
You're
which is
done.
so hard when I'm on a tour with Janet Jackson and she, doesn't finish her show until like at 11 and then meet and greet until 12:30 or 1 a.m. and Ani's like barely staying awake.
Right. Because so you're in Los Angeles and you work with many, many famous people.
I have few, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
fortunate enough to have few high profile people, yes.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Although I cannot imagine being an early riser and being on tour with someone who's doing late night tours. That would be crazy. Okay, so last rapid fire question. I got distracted. The hardest part about this is to keep the answers short. It's like to keep the answers to two or three. So far, a 100% failure rate for me and my guests in keeping that on track. But okay, what is the last thing that you took a photo of?
Oh, yesterday, my niece.
Oh, nice.
Yes, I hung out with my niece yesterday, which
And
was
took a photo of her.
awesome.
That is wonderful. That is wonderful. Okay, so that's it. Ani, thank you so much for being a wonderful guest today on the Imperfect Adulting Show.
Thank you, Emmy. I was happy to be here.
Thank you for listening today. I hope that you enjoy the show. And before I go, I want to encourage you to become a bigger part of the conversation. Obviously, subscribe wherever you're listening to the show. Listen to more episodes. That'd be great. Obvi again, please write a review and tell your friends about the show. That truly is a great help for getting the show in front of new people. Okay, but more fun for you yourself, head over to imperfectadulting.com and join the email community. You'll get some free stuff right away, and that way you'll begin to get the emails about the podcast. This includes the links for the special offers from the guests, and it's the only way to get that. Also, if you aren't in the mood to listen, I actually include an article directly in those emails. Whee! Now, if you love this and you crave more time with me, Amy, as a coach, a mentor, or just adultier adult, numero uno, check out The Village. If you have a story you want to share with the listeners, I'd love to hear from you. I have an open application. Just let me know you want it. And that's a wrap for today. Until next time, remember, the journey is the destination. Ralph Waldo Emerson said that, not me. Well, until just now, I did just say it. But what I want you to hear today is that if your adulting journey isn't going the way you expected, that may not mean that you're lost. It may just mean that you're on your way. This is Amy Stone, signing off. The Imperfect Adulting podcast is created and produced by Amy Stone and Amy Says So. Anything expressed on this show is offered as entertainment, and the views of the guests may not always represent the ideas and viewpoints of the host. That's me. Amy does not intend or hold herself out to provide professional advice or recommendations of any kind. In the end, you and you alone need to make those kinds of decisions based on your personal and individual situation, needs, circumstances, and comfort level.